Well, we're back, Max. We made it.
We did it.
I can't believe it. I don't know why. Well, I know exactly why. The world's been a little crazy right now, and so that was part of the reason that we didn't do Front Center when we were originally supposed to a couple of weeks ago. But I'm glad that we stuck to our guns to make sure we were going to do it, and I am thrilled tonight. I don't know about you, but we have arguably, in my opinion, one of the best people working in all of theater right now with us.
He is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Pretty rad. Yeah, we took a couple weeks off to let some things outside in the world have their time. And while those things are still going on, I think it's also important to entertain people and have fun and talk about art and how we can use art as a means to heal and move forward and progress. So I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be doing the show with none other than Rob Rokicki, who is best known for writing The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical. I have a playbill here. I saw the show a couple times on Broadway. I'm a huge fan of it. I think the music is fucking awesome. Rock and roll musical theater. I love theater aimed towards younger audiences because if you don't capture younger audiences, you're not going to have older audiences in 20 years. And Rob is also just a super chill, interesting, intelligent dude. So I'm stoked to talk to him.
I am too. And real quick before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. You guys have probably noticed we haven't had the watch-alongs the last couple of weeks because, again, we were kind of letting the world heal and try to let the things that were happening be front and center. But starting tomorrow, this watch-alongs will be back. We are going to be doing a watch-along of The Lion King 2019. It'll be myself, Abby Friel, James White, Teresa. We have a whole bunch of people on it. I know, Max, you love this movie so much, so you're just thrilled we're doing it.
I don't, but I have to have fun, guys.
I know, it should be fine. We got family game night going on Saturday with remote insensitivity and Jackbox games. Then Famous Last Words returns Tuesday. Evan will be talking with Chris Clark, which should be a lot of fun. And Suddenly Soundtracks will be on Dreamgirls this week. They got Jeannine the Machine and Alex Mack. It should be a pretty good week. And then we're also going to be doing Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs on Monday with our watch along for the animated movie night. And I am thrilled.
Yeah, that's a great movie. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, but you know what, man? I think that pretty much does it for that. Outside of, we have a Streamlabs account. If you guys have not, or if you would like to, you can hit up the Streamlabs. The link is over there in the comment section. And, if you want to toss us $5, we'll toss you a digital code for some of the movies that you can see pictured here because we have all sorts of digital codes to give out. And we'd love to be able to give you guys some movies. So with that, are you ready to bring Rob on?
Let's do it.
All right. So, you guys, I'm excited. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, doing all right. It's been a stressful couple of months for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Wait, I feel like you guys have your glasses on, and I'm not wearing my glasses now. Now I'm wearing my glasses.
There we go.
Now we're getting into it. We're getting into it.
Perfect.
All right.
Well, I need to wear mine all the time, or I can't see anything.
Yeah, same. I've got like a really bad stigmatism in my left eye, so if I don't wear my glasses, I'm pretty much shot.
It falls out. Your eye actually falls out of your body.
Yeah, and Maxwell's seen it. I've chased my eyeball across his apartment before. It's a mess.
Yeah, it was perfectly Halloweeny and spooky. I loved it.
Awesome.
So I like to go back to the beginning, to the origins of Rob Rokicki and talk a little bit about your childhood, your school experience. So when did you first get interested in theater and music, and when did you know that writing musical theater was what you wanted to do?
I don't know. I grew up in kind of rural Colorado. My mom was a singer, but she was a teacher. My dad was a doctor, but also pianist. So a lot of classical music that floated around my house. That was the big thing. We would go outside a lot. And my dad's a big sci-fi nerd, so I had a lot of kind of sci-fi influences as a kid. But I loved theater. My mom had done musicals as a kid, and like I said, she's a singer. So, and my grandmothers on both my sides were singers. I think it was I don't know. I was born on Halloween. My sister and I are twins. We were Halloween babies, so I always had a bit of love for the spooky. You know, and my mother had introduced me to Sweeney Todd, which kind of changed my life. And that was like the show that was like, ooh, this is what theater can be. And I think when I was a kid, I had tried to adapt Jekyll and Hyde as a musical when I was like 13.
Ooh.
That is awesome.
And I made a poster. It was awesome. Wrote a terrible song for it. The Silence Before the Storm. Excellent song. No, it's terrible. And then I found out that, of course, somebody had already made like a cast recording for it, and this was like the concept recording way back in the day. So it's my first taste of the competitiveness of the biz. But
gotta watch out for Frank Wildhorn.
Right,
he's always going to sneak in there.
Sneaking in there, man. But I think like there's something I would say, you know, even in college, I was always obsessed with kind of Gothic novels. I was a Victorian literature and musical theater major, of course. Two things that you can really make a lot of money in as a career. But I've always loved storytelling. I love the kind of the world of Victorian novels because they're so immersive, right? And I think that's something so wonderful about what theater and especially musicals can do is they really drop you into a world. So I've always loved writing and seeing and being in musicals ever since I was really, really little. I think my first musical I was like first grade was the first musical I was in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And ever since then, I think I just never thought there were other things to do that were more worthwhile. I just always loved being involved, maybe just from the pure, you know, the hamming it up and the pure egotistical side of it all, but the performative side of it all to get attention. But I also think there's just something so powerful about storytelling. I loved it. There was an upperclassman of mine in high school that was a really incredible playwright, and I did a couple of his plays in high school, and I thought, oh wow, that was to me like the new drug. The thing that was really exciting was to see someone who is telling their own story and watching other people perform it and inviting your friends and making this collective and coming up with things out of your head and seeing it on stage. I just got addicted to how cool that was. And so while all my other friends in high school went off to be engineers and whatever, I still like never lost that love of community and storytelling and weirdness and stuff that I like had as my kind of foundation in my youth.
So for a while there, you were leaning more towards performance as opposed to writing?
Oh, forever. I mean, I've been a performer for a long, long time, man. I mean, I went to college at the University of Michigan as being a musical theater performer, you know, Victorian literature. And, you know, I've done national tours as an actor. I've done a lot of regional shows as an actor. I very much love being an actor. But there was kind of this moment in like, I would say 2012 when I booked a Broadway show and then it fell apart because a producer pulled out. And it was just like, I was floundering. I was kind of like, what the hell am I doing anymore? I was very kind of like lost because my sense of identity, my sense of self-worth was tied into success, and that success being, you know, kind of Broadway.
Sure.
Which is, you know, a problem in and of itself, you know, of kind of how we equivocate, we commodify quality with Broadway in and of itself, you know, and that whole machine. And so when that kind of fell apart, I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I was working on a couple different projects, and I had some friends come together and help me put together an album. And that was kind of a real morale booster, which really helped. And then not short after, this little show fell into my lap called The Lightning Thief. So I'd always written musicals too, as I've been an actor as well. They were like a really wonderful outlet for me. Even way back in high school, I was writing shows and plays and things. So I never saw them as two separate things. I just see myself as a storyteller. But I think you have a little bit more agency as a writer to be able to change and be malleable You know what I mean? If you're an actor, this is you, and they either like it or they don't, or the rug can get pulled out from underneath you. But if you're a writer, at least you can say, okay, well, that didn't work. What if I try this? What if I try this? And if that they won't produce it, maybe these people will, or whatever, or I'll put it on myself, or whatever, you know?
But when you were younger, were your parents supportive of your dreams of being an actor and a writer and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think, like, you know, I can't believe they were. I don't know if I would have been as much. I mean, knowing now what I know and how hard the business is, and you know, I'm very grateful for how patient and how supportive they've been. They never once said, "Don't do this."
That's lucky. That's I feel like from the other people I talk to, and even myself to a certain extent, that's a rare experience to have that full level of support, because you know better than anyone how challenging and risky and I don't know, just with the amount of rejection you have to face, it can be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think they always were like, well, you know, he's pretty smart. Maybe he'll figure it out, and maybe he'll do something else if it doesn't work out. But it just kind of kept, you know, I think it was because I put so many hours in. You know what they say when you're good at something because you put so many hours into a thing? Yeah. I became good at theater just because of the amount of training and effort and work that I did. It was just a lot of work.
Yeah. Practice and rehearsal is everything. Yeah,
and reading and studying and appreciating and trying to learn all different facets of theater. And
I'm jumping around a little bit, but are you able to actually write music on sheets with the notes and stuff, or do you write in a different way?
No. I'm very comfortable writing and notating music. I actually, my day job is laying out scores as a music copy editor. So I very much am familiar with laying out finale scores of music. But that was a skill that I never really had developed as like in my youth. That was something that came along in kind of college as a kind of necessity. Sure. It was just like, I need to figure out how to notate this. The funny thing is, I am pretty convinced, even though I've never been diagnosed, that I have a little bit of dyscalculia. I have a really hard time with rhythm of notating it. But I am very good at like coming up with rhythms and coming up with melodies very easily. But the notation of it takes like so long. I mean, and because you're thinking about the arrangement of it, you know, you'll write a song in a day, but then like the laying out of the song could take 3 or 4 weeks.
Right. So do you orchestrate your own stuff as well, or do you work with other people?
I love collaborating, so it depends on the project. Right now, I'm currently orchestrating a jukebox musical, which I never thought I'd be doing ever, but it's all with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Joe Iconis, and it's all female-fronted rock bands from the 70s until now. So I'm getting to arrange and some of my favorite artists, Pat Benatar and Blondie, it's Slater Kinney. It's just been a joy. So that's been really fun to like just flex the arranger orchestrator muscle. Yeah. Rather than having the onus of all of the creation of the song to fall on you. Sure. The structure of the song.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to a reading of that. I think last year. And the orchestrations and the use of the songs was really, really cool. I liked it a lot.
Thanks. It's only going to get better. We're having a good time.
It's a fun project for sure. With some, without spoiling anything, some plot elements I did not see coming. So,
well, one of the things that I love about Joe is that he loves to play with genre, and that's something that I love too in musical theater, is playing with genre, whether that be sci-fi or fantasy or horror. I think that's something that's just like stretching the medium, playing around with things, and I love that.
Well, I think that's really important just in general. I mean, my favorite musical of all time is still Little Shop of Horrors, because I think it's such a love letter to like 50s science fiction and B movies and horror, but it's also a love letter to Broadway and musicals, but done in such a different way. And I think that we get lost sometimes. People want things to be the specific Broadway type play, but sometimes I like when we push the genres in different directions and do new things.
Absolutely. And I think like Little Shop is like kind of a great example of a show that started off Broadway, and how off Broadway is able to take chances with genre and take chances with tone and risk. It's such a beautiful show because it plays with horror and comedy, but it's got real heart to it, right? And it's playing with kind of these kind of pastiche 1950s, doo-woppy tunes as well. It's one of Alan Menken's best scores. It's definitely one of Howard Ashman. My God, what a genius! His lyrics, and one of my favorite shows. But yeah, I think off Broadway is such a bastion for ingenuity. It's such a place of daring and risk taking. It's some of my favorite shows I've ever seen have been off Broadway shows.
Yeah, I agree, and not to go like too far off the reservation, but I think there's a bit of a, I don't know if misnomer is the right word, but in the industry, the idea that if you don't make it to Broadway, you don't make it, and I don't think that's true at all. I think that's almost unfair to so many of the riskier, more unique genre or otherwise shows.
That's part of a larger conversation that I think the theater industry is having a really interesting time right now, not just talking about kind of the systemic racism that's kind of pervasive through all of society, including all of our entertainment, right? I mean, it's in theater as much as it is in film and everything else, but looking at classism and how it's tied to that, right? And the economics of who gets to see theater, who gets to assess theater, like where theater gets to combine with community and like I think also like the economics of the expense of theater, the capitalism aspect of it is really tricky. It's so expensive on Broadway and people expect a certain amount for their money.
Yep. And
the return is so insane because you have to have there's so high stakes because of just the real estate of it, which is such a bummer because there could be even more some of the most risky, exciting theater is the one that can be the theater that can get the most return for it. I've been thinking a lot about some of my favorite theater in the past year, like shows like Soft Power, which was really exciting. Shows like Strange Loop. But also shows like the Public Theater's Hercules in Central Park, which
that was incredible.
Did you see that, Max?
I did. Yeah, we won the lottery. I was so thrilled to win, and it was just like few theater experiences I've had have given me such overwhelmingly joyous experience.
I was a mess the whole time. I just cried and cried because that's what theater is. It's community, right?
Community, absolutely.
It's rich and poor, black and white, old and young, everybody coming together, seasoned professionals with amateurs, all telling a story about like a guy trying to do the right thing in a community that backs up behind him. And I couldn't have been more like in love with that production, and I wish there was more opportunities for theater like that. But I think that's part of the thing that makes me bristle a bit with Broadway. And what I'm hoping when we come back from this quarantine, when we come back from what we are in this new normal, when we come back to the theater community, maybe we'll be a little bit wiser. Maybe we'll be a bit able to embrace some more change in the theater.
There are a lot of producers out there who I think would be wise to use this break as a learning experience for ways to connect more to community, to make it more accessible, to rework the economics of Broadway so that not just wealthy, upper middle class and above white people get to buy tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think that's all of entertainment right now, too, because I think that Hollywood is going to have a very similar conversation with themselves on how they're spending their money, how we're putting movies out, because even to what Rob was just saying, like if you look at independent cinema, a lot of the most exciting films that come out throughout the year are independent.
Absolutely.
And, so we need to be able to make sure people are seeing those and not just the big blockbusters.
But the difference between independent film and in theater is that independent film can find its audience and they can find a separate distributor, whereas theater is reliant on ticket sales and these gatekeepers, and it's like 5 theaters. And part of the thing that I keep thinking about is, these gatekeepers, and I'm obviously, I've been part of the system and I'm product of privilege. But you see, the Nederlanders giving $30,000 to the Trump administration for their campaign, and you're like, something is not adding up here. If you're taking your money you're making from Hamilton and giving it to the Trump administration, you know what I mean? It's like, how do we use this to help create a more level playing field? And I don't know if that's also in terms of like how technology meets with that, because I love being in a room with people, but because of this disease and how, trying to figure out how does theater survive in this new place of, do we film it? How does that work? How do royalties work? How do all of those things? I think people are all trying to find creative solutions out of right now to find a more equitable way of bringing people together and doing it in a way that feels like we're getting new stories told that maybe haven't gotten out there before.
Yeah, and I think there's been a couple of really interesting examples over the last few months, like Michael Urie did Byron Cellar from his house, and obviously the way that show is written lends itself to a Zoom performance, but I thought that was super successful. And they did Significant Other, which I think is a really beautiful play, and that worked really, really well via Zoom. So I think there are creative ways to make theater more accessible, and this has been a really fascinating learning experience for artists. But as much as and as long as I could talk about politics and the politics of theater, I do want to jump back to The Lightning Thief.
Sure.
So how did you first get involved? Did someone bring it to you? Did you pitch on it? What was the process?
Like I said, I was floundering. I was a broke actor that had lost his Broadway show, and that same week I had a show that was supposed to open at a fancy theater out in Los Angeles, and our producers, one decided to go back to grad school and dropped us. So I had the show that I'd written fell apart. The show that I was supposed to be in that was going to change my kind of my life had fallen apart. So I was in a real pickle. And that was when I think it was Joe Iconis reached out. Oh my God, I just heard fireworks. It's that time of year when fireworks at 3 a.m. are happening in Astoria, and you're like, was that a car backfiring? Was that a gunshot? No, it's fireworks. No, I got I think it was an email from Joe Iconis, who was like, TheaterWorks is looking for writers for this fantasy project. You should absolutely put your name in the ring for this thing. And I was like, oh, what is this? And then I reached out, and they were like, yeah, submit, a tape. We'll have you meet Joe Trace. And so a bunch of writers basically submitted demos. And I wrote a couple demos, and they liked mine. And I met with Joe and Joe Trace, and we hit it off, and we really connected about the tone of the piece. We thought this is a show that we both like. I think Joe really loves a young adult fiction, and there's something about kind of how we're all in this state of arrested development, trying to figure out our lives, that he just taps into so perfectly. And his dialogue is that kind of Joss Whedon-ish kind of effervescence, just bubbly, exciting dialogue that is so whip smart and so fun. And these kids from broken homes that are using humor as a defense mechanism. But there was so much heart in the script of what I had read of what Joe presented, because he had originally done it as a play. And TheaterWorks was like, oh, we think this should be a musical, and it should be a rock musical. And that's when they started reaching out to their feelers of who writes rock music. And that's how my name got thrown in the ring.
It's interesting you mentioned Joss Whedon, because I did remember thinking to myself at one point watching your show, there is a little bit of the DNA of Buffy in this.
A little bit. I think there's that idea of that just like in Little Shop, right? It's these, kind of everyman characters thrown in insanely extraordinary situations. There's humor, there's horror, there's fantasy. But at the end of the day, there's a real heart to it, right? There's a real connection and real stakes. And that's something that we knew we wanted to tap into, that, and we knew we had our work cut out for us, because the movies failed to do that. They really, the fans very much bristled against the kind of Hollywoodization aging up the characters, making it sexier,
Right.
losing the kind of relationship between parents and their kids, which to me is the heart of the story.
Absolutely.
Which is the most Greek. It's the most Aeschylus. It's the most Clytemnestra and Agamemnon of like, how do we fall in cycles? Do we follow in our parents' footsteps, or do we make our own, identities and our own morality?
Yeah,
and move forward out of all this,
I think the campfire song is one of the highlights of the show because it really taps into that so well.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's a silly song about griping about your parents.
Well, who can't relate to that though?
No. That song is on so many of my playlists ever since I saw the show. Like, I listen to it all the time. It's my favorite song for that very reason, because it feels very raw and emotional in the right way, because we've all been there,
Right. We all just want to gripe about our parents, messing it all up for the rest of us.
I know when you first did it with TheaterWorks, it was a 1-act.
Right.
At what point was it decided to expand it to a full 2-act musical?
We were so happy with that 1-act. We didn't think we'd get the rights away from the film studio to even be able to have it as a sit-down production. One of the things, this show started as free summer theater. Yeah. Helping out underserved communities, getting people in to see theater, many kids who'd never seen theater before, and it went on a little tour. And the fact that 1-hour show got nominated for Outstanding Musical for Lurtzi Lortel against Fortress of Solitude and Hamilton, we were like, something seems to be resonating with people. Yeah. And for a little family-friendly show to do that, I think it perked up a lot of ears. And after several tours went out of the 1-hour tour, TheaterWorks decided to take a chance and do something they'd never done before, which was, let's expand this and make it a 2-act show. Bring in outside producers and flesh it out to be a full-length musical. And that was thrilling. It really was. I think we'd always wanted it to be that, but we had to kind of trim to condense. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of the 1-act version, but the 2-act version we were able to like kind of, as Joe Trace likes to say, the 1-act version was a roller coaster and the 2-act was the theme park. You could actually do all the things you wanted to do. Yeah. And we get to sit with the characters more. You get to raise the stakes. You get to let the show breathe a little bit more. It wasn't just so breakneck,
Right.
Were you familiar with the books before Joe Iconis talked to you about pitching it?
No, I hadn't been familiar with it, and I don't even know if Iconis had been familiar with it. It was Joe Trace who was obsessed with these books. Joe loved these books. Now, randomly, I mentioned my mom was a history teacher. She was loved Greek myths, and I had this giant book of Greek myths growing up that I loved. So I knew a lot about Greek myths, but I had only kind of been heard in passing of these books. So I read the book in a kind of like a flurry. I read it very quickly, and I fell in love with it immediately. I was like, I get the tone of it. I watched like half the movie, and I was like, oh my God, they don't get it. They don't get it. And then I went, but the Rick's writing is so fun, and I think Percy. I think because I had been in a situation where I worked so hard, and I thought I'd done all the right things, and my career had just kind of fallen apart. And you try and try and try, and nothing is good enough. That's where I kind of immediately related to this kid who'd been kicked out of all these schools, who just couldn't catch a break. And I was like, oh, I think so many people relate to this Percy kid and his snarky sense of humor. And I just fell in love with that character. So I immediately knew how to write this story, just kind of putting my own, experiences into it. Yeah. My own teenage angst, but as my own 30-something angst.
I think we, to a certain extent, we never really let go of that teenage angst. It's always hiding under there somewhere.
We're always trying to please our parents. We're always trying to be popular. We're always trying to do the right thing and seek approval. And I think so.
So it goes on this national tour. You play the Beacon Theater. You're going all over, and it starts building this really.
Oh, that was nuts. So, we did this 2-act version off Broadway, and that got nominated for Drama Desks Awards, which we weren't expecting. And the theater industry is so bizarre. Like the day we got nominated for a Drama Desk Award, for 3 Drama Desk Awards, was the day that I lost out on another job because the producer was like, I have to have the rights and direct the show, and it all fell apart at the same time. So it's just like, it comes in cycles, and you're just like, oh, whatever. At least this wonderful, like, weird fantasy show keeps doing around. So yeah, we got some traction out of it, and then we had the fortune of doing a cast recording, and that's what really galvanized everybody to say, let's do a national tour. So the Martian group combined with some other producers, which is wonderful, and they did this national tour. And I swear, this, we wrote the show right in the height, when we expanded the show, because we wrote the show in 2013, 2014, the 1 hour. And then we expanded it was 2017. It was right when the election was happening. And so the like last number, Bring on the Monsters, is kind of a big kind of, as my wife from the South likes to say, a big come to Jesus of like, of these kids taking agency, saying like, wow, our parents really messed things up. We're going to have to fight these monsters ourselves. And it was a direct kind of call to arms against the Trump administration, quite honestly. And to know that message of like kids saying, hey, we see you, you're powerful, your uniqueness and your difficulties that you may have is actually your strength. Use that, and to like have that message go across the country was something really empowering for all of us. And I was so grateful for that opportunity. We got to play some of the most incredible theaters in the nation. We got to play the Beacon, which was like a lifelong dream of mine. I mean,
yeah, that theater is stunning.
It's gorgeous, and the fact that I had seen Brandy Carlisle play there and Chris Cornell play there, it's just nuts. Tom Petty played it. Prince played the big
legends have touched that stage.
So to feel that kind of history, and to be like, that also is a bit of subversion in of itself, to be like, who cares what happens about Broadway? Our show played the Beacon.
Yeah.
In New York City, man. That's rock and roll, man.
That's like,
and we sold it out. I was like, it was something insane. That place holds like 2,800 people. And it was like, for the 1 or 2 weekend, 4 days we played, we sold out. It's like something insane. It was like 4,000 to 5,000 people that got to see our show. It's really special. Really, really special.
Yeah, I don't want to be accused of being a kiss ass, but that song "Bring on the Monsters" has become a real like anthem for me. Like when I'm feeling down, it really lifts me up and like inspires me to like fight back.
It makes it for me too, man. I think sometimes I write songs as pep talks to myself sometimes.
Absolutely. That's the beautiful thing of art. You can put what you need to hear yourself into it, and then if it has that effect on other people, even better.
Exactly.
So you have like all these like young fans now who love your show. What's that like to have such a passionate fan base who are like posting on Tumblr, making fan art, just in love with your music and the characters that you...
Well, I think it's they love the world that Rick's created.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think like we all tapped into that, and that's why it's done well, because we kept true to the spirit of the thing, and the thing is so special. The kind of weird take on Greek myths, which I think it's kind of one of the oldest stories. It's the oldest superheroes. But I'm very grateful that people have latched onto our musical in particular as a source of like hope, and I think that has a little bit to do with also our incredible social media and our Twitter account, Ashley Latimer, and how her engagement to the marginalized and like calling out BS when she sees it and trying to be engaging with people. I think like it's created this community of people that feel seen and feel excited and feel energized to like make change.
I think you read my mind, because that was literally my next question, was talking about how amazing I think the Twitter account is. And now that we're allowed to acknowledge who it was, Ashley, who I'm friends with, and what New was doing this before her like brilliant New York Times profile.
Right.
I think social media is powerful, but I think what she did with your account for that show was just remarkable. Like if there were awards for that, she should have won an award. It was really
absolutely
beautiful.
She was able to speak truth to power in a way that I don't think anyone has been able to in a long time.
I don't think other producers would let their accounts do that.
No, I think it just had to do with something as special and as scrappy as our show, quite honestly. You know, the kind of unassuming origins of where our show came from and that kind of community spirit. And knowing that, like, our show resonates with young people and we need to activate and engage them on their terms, right? And make sure they feel seen.
Well, I was going to say, and that's very much in the DNA of who Rick is too, like as an author, because he's using his platform for doing very similar things, really trying to throw that energy into the world and make sure that he's fighting on the right side of things.
Yeah, and I won't call out other fantasy writers right now that are messing up big time. But
we've had plenty of conversations about that.
I think it's very telling that Rick decided to create his own imprint of books to say, hey, let's get other stories from all over the world with other authors of different races and different nationalities to get to tell their stories of myths and legends. And I'm going to help just as an imprint oversee it, but I'm not going to write their stories. I'm going to let them tell their stories and help give a platform to celebrate them. And I think like that is such a wonderful way of using your privilege to help elevate and be part of a conversation than to just tear people down. And I'm just, you know what I mean? Just like, JK, what are you doing, man?
She's breaking my heart on almost a weekly basis at this point. Every time she opens her mouth, man.
If you're the most famous author in the world, the least you can do is just to not hurt people at a time when people need protection and when lives are at stake. Lives are literally at stake.
Yeah.
And she has the power to do so much good, or to just like leave yourself away from the conversation.
Right.
Just don't get involved with something you don't know about, or just leave it alone.
Just keep your mouth shut sometimes is the best.
Whoa, man. Well, that's something I'm trying to practice a little bit too, is just like, all right, how the hell do I just like try to listen and try to absorb this moment right now of how to put into practice a way of doing things better.
Yeah. I think that's good advice for anyone. Do you have any sort of relationship with Rick? Have you spoken to him about the project?
No, I mean, he's always been the kind of benevolent God that we don't see. Joe had a meeting with him early on in the process. We've been very close with his agents all throughout the entire process. Nancy and Marietta at the Galt Zachary agency through Disney Hyperion, they've been wonderful. They've like every step of the way gone through every iteration of the script, and you can do this, you can't do that, you can't combine those characters, this is what the tone, you know.
Right.
We've just tried to do right by them because they're, you know, with Rick the most. But we also appreciate that Rick has an idea in his head of who these people are, and he didn't want to get influenced at all. You know what I mean? By seeing a different version when he's still writing these characters. He's so prolific. Yeah. But his parents came to see the show in Texas and they loved it. And his wife has been very supportive of the show. He's been very supportive of the show. I think because the fans love it so much, he has kind of seen that we've done right by them. So he's embraced us.
That's good.
I'm very excited to see what happens with Disney.
I'm thrilled for that. I think it's great, especially when you have an author who he feels his work was not treated properly priorly, gets a second opportunity to bring it to the screen in a way that I'm hopeful will be more faithful.
Oh, we'll see. You know, I don't know.
I mean, I think it goes a long way with having him so involved this time with like actually outlining what he would like them to do. And I mean, Disney doesn't necessarily have to follow that outline, but they seem to be pretty lockstep with him because I think that he felt so burned before, which is why knowing that he supported your guys' version of the show is so important, because he didn't feel as burned. Like, you kept the spirit of it alive. And I think that went a long way.
Yeah. So then you make it to Broadway. Do you remember where you were when you found out that was going to happen? What was that feeling like?
I didn't believe it. I thought it was a joke. I thought they were kidding. Because this had happened to me once and had been taken away from me, I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I'm very skeptical. We also had a long conversation as well about like, well, this show was loved off Broadway, and people are not going to like the powers that be, the kind of elite, may not understand our show. They might tear it apart. Do we not go to Broadway? And a lot of us were like, and we all kind of took a moment. We're like, no, of course we do. Our show belongs there. Shows like ours belong there. We need to like show that family-friendly audiences and shows that inspire young people both have a place. And scrappy, immersive, weird, theatrical, shows that involve a lot of imagination and stagecraft, like they belong on Broadway too. So like that was a big conversation too. It was like, all right, are we really going to do this? Because this could be scary. There were a lot of, and so like, I think we all were like, okay, yeah, we're going to do it. Let's do it. And I was terrified, but really excited.
Well, I think other than the songs, one of my favorite things about the show is that use of imagination. It's really very minimalist. It uses old-fashioned stagecraft. Like PJ and I were lucky enough to get to go backstage after a performance in, what was that, December?
Yeah, I think it must have been December.
And like,
it was when we were there for Christmas.
Just to see how they rigged up the like toilet paper roll launchers and like how simple yet beautifully effective some of the puppetry was is just awesome. You don't have to spend tons of money to make something spectacular. And I think on a very, like you keep saying scrappy, and like a scrappy feel, it felt like fantasy in a way that shows with $40 or $50 million budgets didn't.
It's the question of, do you want to talk to your audience and have them be part of the experience? And this is something Joe and Stephen Brackett, our director, and I kept talking about is we want to take the audience to camp. We don't want to have this wall between us and them. We want them to feel like they're there, that they're a part of this, that they're welcome, and that they could do this themselves maybe, even with a little bit of extra magic, Yeah. But that like you are welcome here was something that we never wanted to lose.
Yeah, I think it came across. So this is a bit of a delicate subject, and I think it also ties into how powerful and engaging the Twitter account was. But after some reviews came out, after you opened on Broadway, Ashley was very outspoken in engaging constructively with the approach some of the critics took. How did you feel about that? And if you're not comfortable talking about it, it's fine.
No, it's fine. It's interesting just because, if we're talking about, changing theater right now, especially we're talking about changing kind of systemic racism and in theater, and, it's through a primarily patriarchal white male gaze, but also we got to change how theater is assessed. And part of that also is tied to capitalism and class and classism and this elitism of I need to see a lot of money on stage to equal quality. And this double standard where we would get a review off Broadway by a certain critic that will not be named from a certain, well-known publication that said, this is the greatest show I've seen. This is so inventive and exciting. The songs are wonderful. The same critic, when the show moves to Broadway, ripping apart the music or whatever, the show didn't change. So what changed? What the change was is the perception about like what your money is buying when you're seeing a show. Your perception is classism. Your perception is elitism, and part of that has got to change if we're going to get more diversity of voices. Of I hate that word. We're talking a lot now about equality, not just diversity on stage, and that has to do with just representation of different writers as well, of different backgrounds. But I'm talking right now, though, too, how the commodification of quality with wealth is a problem. People equate Donald Trump with being good because he's a millionaire or whatever, right? And that is not the case, And I think like that's something we have to address, and something that our Twitter account just refused to kowtow to the fact that these privileged people that didn't get our show, well, the show wasn't written for you. And the funny thing is, you liked our show when it was off Broadway. You liked our show when our show was on a national tour in theaters twice the size of this Broadway show. But now we're in a Broadway theater, and what does Broadway mean? And I think like that is a problem. That is a problem, and of what quote unquote the big white way means. audience.
Right. And I think as an extension of that, and it's no secret, I work in the theater, I invest, I produce. I've been involved with a couple shows now where a single review from a single outlet can close your show.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, I don't mind bad reviews. I don't care.
No.
But the problem with theater is, unlike an aggregator like Rotten Tomatoes, where you get thousands, hundreds of critics reviewing your show, one bad review from the New York Times can destroy your entire musical that millions of, money have been put in, and all these, or it may not even come to Broadway because of the opinions of one person. Usually,
one person who is usually a middle-aged or older white male who is looking at it through a classist lens, as you said.
Well, and true, but I don't mind a bad review if it takes into consideration what was the show trying to achieve, how did it achieve it, did it do it, did it not, and I think the double standard there is, well, if you liked our show when it was at the Beacon, if you liked our show when it was at the Lucille Hotel, what has changed for you? And if our show, we're specifically trying to keep the ticket prices low, which is something I'm very proud of our producers for doing, to allow a family of four to be able to see a show, then you're literally just saying this is semantics of, I need my spectacle. I need what the ideal epitome of Broadway is in my mind to be XYZ, and that means money in a different way.
It's very gatekeepery in a way too, because they want it to be such a specific thing. But again, to what we were talking about earlier, you can't always look at things in that lens. Like, there has to be evolution.
You know what I mean? We didn't care. We just wanted to tell a good story.
Right.
We just wanted to tell a good story in a theatrical way. And that's also why we were just like, if people hate it, they hate it. But we know at the end of the day that the fans, the people that love this story and know that we've been good stewards of this property, they love it. And people who love weird, inventive rock musicals love it. And at the end of the day, those are the people that I care about. I mean, I've gotten so many letters from so many people saying that this show helped them, or this show saved their life, or this show meant something to them, from all walks of life. You'd go out, you'd look in the audience, and you'd see, every person. It was truly like just the most wide demographics of ages and races at seeing a show. It was truly humbling, and that I will take with me forever more than any review. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Definitely the right approach, I think. And I think, speaking for PJ and I, we were also two of those people who loved it, and it spoke to us, and it stayed with us. Well, so, I kept going back. I saw it a bunch of times. I won't say how many. I don't want to embarrass myself on this broadcast.
Well, and also, I mean, the fan base really was great and really welcoming. Even like the first time I saw it, remember we talked to the people in front of us, and the girl had seen it a bunch of times as it had toured, and she just wanted to talk about it with us.
Yeah,
it was very, very cool. Like, I had never had that experience ever at any other show that I had ever been to.
It's a cool event. I mean, I really love that when people find something that kind of, people feel ownership, and then it becomes bigger than you, and that's kind of how I feel about it. It almost feels like a dream. Like, I didn't even write the thing, even though I worked on it for 8 years. It's just like one of those things that now it's bigger than me, and it's everybody's now. They own it as much as I do.
It's sort of like that old philosophy, death of the author. After something is out in the world, it doesn't belong to the author anymore. It belongs to the fans and the consumers, and how they react to it and how they respond to it.
Right. And I think in some cases, that's also how I hope that we take another franchise, Harry Potter, where we can love and appreciate all the good that has done for us and negate the kind of bad.
I think so. So, could you ever see yourself adapting the second book?
We talked about, what we might do with some of these other stories. We really did. I think it's just tricky because of, when a property this well loved, there's a lot of kind of legal red tape that's tied up with it. So it's kind of out of my control. But if somebody said, hey, would you write some more for Percy or Annabeth or Nico or, Tyrone, any of these guys, I would totally do it in a heartbeat. I love this book series so much, and I think there's just a lot of heart in all of the different books. So I would love to do it.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit. You spoke earlier on about how you always love spooky things. You said your birthday is Halloween, which is fucking awesome. Let's talk about monster songs.
Sure. I said Tyrone. I meant Tyson. I'm so tired right now. I'm talking about Tyson the Cyclops, which is Percy's cousin from the second book. I'm sorry. The fans will be all up in me if I don't correct myself. And I just want to say, yeah, we talk about monster songs.
Well, you know, I love monster songs. Me and my producing partners produced a concert of monster songs last October, right around Halloween. And that was been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in theater so far. What was like and if you're not familiar with it, Monster Songs has an amazing graphic novel that goes along with it. There's also a VR experience that we were able to showcase after the concert. So what was the iteration of this idea? Why did you want to write songs that bring emotion and life and heart to these iconic monsters that we know so well?
Well, you know, I think the original idea was I wanted to write with some different writers, and I always had kind of a visual element in mind for it. You know, ever since I was drawing my Jekyll and Hyde musical as a kid, I think it was again, my friend Joy Conasai, we worked on a song about a Yeti and a Sasquatch that kind of found each other, and we were both in a kind of hard place right in our lives, and we just valued our friendship so much that song kind of came out of that. And I was like, you want to write more songs with me? He's like, no, this is your baby. You need to go ahead and find your way into this thing. So I started writing songs, and but I always feed off collaboration. I love collaboration, but this was a very different kind of collaboration. I thought there was a visual element to all of these monsters, and I started seeing how we project our fears onto something we don't understand, and so we ostracize, we hate, we other people, and you know, this idea of love in all these kind of archetypical monster stories started coming around. So it's like, what if there was a Dr. Frankenstein, a Frankenstein's monster song, but it was from Igor's point of view, because you never hear from Igor's point of view. And what if he was in love with Dr. Frankenstein, but Dr. Frankenstein was only focused on the monster, so it was unrequited love? What if there was Medusa, you know, and Medusa, you know, obviously she was a victim of sexual assault from Poseidon, and what if we heard from her point of view as this woman who's afraid to let anyone in because she'll only hurt them, and that of self-love. Let's look at that. Let's look at you know, the ghost and this idea of apathy, of somebody not really seeing you. They'll see right through you, but you're right there, but they don't see you. So this idea of love started connecting itself through all these ideas. And then I met up with my buddy Dave O'Neill, and I said, will you draw something for me? I just want to see one of these pictures. And he was like, all right, I'll draw one. So I think he may have drawn the footprints one. And I was like, okay, now I want to do something totally different. So I'm going to hire another artist to maybe do a comic book of these. So he's like, no, let me take a chance at this. And I had seen some of his work. He had done some character sketches that were really gruesome and cool for some Game of Thrones stuff. But he had also done a bunch of children's books. So I knew he did silly cartoons. But then I was like, all right, I'm writing a song from a doppelganger's point of view, who is a serial killer, and it's kind of this unchecked male ego. We're talking about just kind of rampant sexism of this monster who wants to he doesn't want to hurt someone, but he can't stop himself from doing it. And this kind of you know, the Tom Cavanaughs of the world. And I'm just what, you know, what? I want to create this really spooky guy, and he created this black and white, terrifying, Frank Miller, design. I was like, oh my God, this is the guy to do this. So we went through monster to monster, talking about what the monster looked like in our world, and you know, obviously this, which is what do we think of when we think about this particular monster? What is a witch? What is a witch, right? How do we define that? And then playing around with the genre of the song, whether that was a kind of 1960s fun girl group thing, Blood and Brains with a zombie and a vampire that are dating the same boy, and they're ripping him apart because it's all consuming them. And that felt kind of an Amy Winehouse kind of faux 60s bop. So he got these great illustrative ideas out of that. So we combined I'd never worked like that from a visual storytelling point of view and an auditory point of view. So like we would talk genre and the monster and what makes the monster, and then we would go about writing the song and the illustration together. So it was very much designed together to be this comic book synthesis of a comic book musical.
Are there particular films or books in the monster or horror genre that inspired your writing on it?
I mean, I always loved Nightmare Before Christmas, clearly. But there's like some like Grimm's fairy tales where like, you know, also like I have like an old copy of like the Bluebeard story, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
That I had like this very creepy like woodworking, like a, what do you call it when you do like a wood etching and you
like
take a
whittling?
print of it? Yeah, we take like a print of it, you know.
Yeah.
So we wanted
my friend does that.
we wanted the witch to have that kind of feel, of that kind of like old kind of Grimm's fairy tale kind of hand drawn, hand carved thing. There was a lot of different horror genres that we played around with. I also just love genres of music. You know, growing up, my family only listened to classical music, so I had a love of opera, a love of, you know, all kinds of weird stuff. But my dad and I love soul music. That's like the only music we would agree that we could listen to. The Beatles and like Wilson Pickett and Aretha Franklin, we could agree on that. So like, I think like a lot of the songs came out of like, okay, what does this feel like in terms of the genre of it, and then we can play around with some stylized versions of that. But there's a lot of horror movies that I love that I think like the color of a movie like It Follows, that kind of neon color is present in like the ghosts, but the like kind of Sin City noirish aspect of kind of gothic horror we definitely embraced in a couple things too.
Yeah, more people should see It Follows. That movie is very good.
Yes, it is.
Terrifying.
Are there other monsters you want to write songs for? Like, could you ever see yourself expanding monster songs beyond what it is now?
Absolutely. I mean, we had ideas for other songs. There was like a kind of dance song that was like weird, trancy for an alien. But I mean, they're all metaphors, right?
Right.
I mean, the monster, the troll was based on a guy that lives down my street who's homeless, and it's based on two different homeless people who live down the street from me, and this idea that if society gives up on you, do you turn your back and become the monster they expect you to be? You know, as much as you try to help them, you know, and that like idea of societal love, familial love. What if you don't get that? What happens? You know, do we? You know, that perception of the other. So I have a feeling I'll find a monster in a place where I never expected it. They're always lurking out there. You know?
Well, certainly in Washington right now, there's quite a few.
Oh my God.
To say the
No,
least.
I think my monsters and monster songs have more humanity in them than most of the people
100%.
in Washington.
I think one of the great things about monster songs and why it is so firmly in the tradition of great sci-fi and horror is the best horror stories are always allegories or metaphors for something else entirely than what you're actually seeing on screen. Like Frankenstein is not just Frankenstein's monster. He represents something else much more deeply human.
Well, that's why I love Lights Out.
Which, I'm sorry?
Oh, Lights Out, because it's such an interesting twist on depression and like, what does that do to someone?
I love that movie.
So good.
Well, you know, also there's this wonderful author. We did this event, and I don't want to mess her name up. But she, her name is Mallory, and I want to make sure I get her name right. I will figure it out. But she wrote this book about the creature from the Black Lagoon. And she talks a lot about like why horror, Mallory O'Meara. And it's all about the woman who designed The Creature from the Black Lagoon, because a lot of women get overlooked in horror. And they're making and she was tweeting the other day about the remake of Bride of Frankenstein is a new movie coming out. It's not being written by a woman, which is a major lost opportunity. But Mallory had this like quote she said in the reading that she did when we did this like joint event a couple months ago, way back in October. My God, time means nothing anymore.
I don't know. I don't know what day it is, what month it is, what time it is. It's all just like an amorphous blur at this point.
But the quote had something to do along the lines of people who are ostracized or othered from society are the very people that need to be represented in horror, because they're the ones that horror happens to.
Well, that's why I thought this year's The Invisible Man worked so well.
I loved that. I loved it so much.
Good.
So smart. Such a smart approach to like twist the classic story and make it about, as you were just saying, someone who's been othered who we need to tell these stories about.
Right. It's like the best Me Too movie that doesn't come out and just say it's about Me Too.
Right.
100%.
And Elizabeth Mott's performance is insane. Like her physicality in that performance is nuts.
Regardless of her religious choices, I think she's one of the very, very best actresses we have right now.
Yes, I have a lot of mixed feelings about. I'm writing another musical about a cult right now, so yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Scientology.
That you were so prescient. That actually brings me to what I want to talk about next. Is like, what other projects are you working on? What's upcoming? What are your goals?
Oh, my goals, as they were for the past like couple of years, have been like to try to find people that don't share my worldview or that don't look like me, to try to collaborate with them to tell new stories. And so far I've been pretty successful in trying to do that. Kind of post Lightning Thief. I'm working on a musical called Experience Marianas, which is about a cult, about a woman that is like trying to escape this oceanic cult. And you get indoctrinated in real time, which is really fun in the show. Oh, wow. But a lot of the things that really scare me, and I like to write about things that scare me, like groupthink and tribalism, is like such a part of our everyday that we don't even think about it. And I think like we were examining that 2 years ago, and we did a lot of research on cults, and we had to create a whole like kind of world for them. So I'm excited to get some of those songs out there because I'm really proud of those songs. Working with Sarah Beth Pfeiffer on that, which is really fun.
Oh, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you seen the film Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene?
I have. I love that movie. It's great.
That's very much in the same realm of what you're talking about, with being indoctrinated and trying to escape a cult and the after effects of that, and
absolutely
PTSD you might have, etc. It's fascinating.
It is.
I was on your website earlier. There are a couple other projects that I wasn't that familiar with, like 1111 or Strange Tales. What can you tell us about those?
1111 was a show that was called Relativity for a long time. It's about brother and a sister, twins, and kind of them trying to figure out their identities. It's a two-hander, so it's a two-person musical, kind of told out of sequence, kind of Quentin Tarantino-y. We workshopped it at USC last year, or 2 years ago, and that was a blast. And it's about, like a woman who is like coming to terms with her sexual identity, trying to find her way, and a younger brother who like goes to Afghanistan. He has PTSD, and it's like PTSD, and he tries to come back to some kind of normal. And it's this kind of will they, won't they story, but more about a brother and a sister of like, will they or won't they reconcile their differences kind of thing. I've never really been interested in romantic stories, especially between kind of heterosexual couples. It just doesn't really interest me. I am really interested in kind of sibling relationships, monsters, friendships.
Well,
yeah.
You said you have a twin, right?
I do have a twin sister.
So I'm sure that lends itself to your interest in sibling relationships.
Absolutely. So, 1111 was a real labor of love. I wrote it with my friend Michael Ruby. It's had a lot of different iterations, and I'm very proud of the songs from that. Some of the songs are on my first album, so if you ever get a chance to find that album, it's called I'm Ready. There's some real pretty tunes on that. The other show you mentioned was Strange Tales. That was the show that was supposed to have a life before it all fell apart when the producer backed out and went to grad school. Strange Tales had won a bunch of little awards. It's TAILS. It's 3 mini stories of animal heroisms. It's true stories of how animals save people and kind of our relationship between animals and how we need them. And it's absolutely zany, weird, wacky 4-person show. And maybe my favorite thing I've ever written. I love it very much. It's narrated by Coco the gorilla.
That's awesome.
And I'm so into that. That sounds awesome.
It's one of the weirdest things I've ever written. It's, a woman's bird is kidnapped in the first piece and she tries to get it back. And the second piece, it's about a caper comedy between two British pigs that escape from being killed from the slaughterhouse. And it's, again, this is a true story. They evaded capture. They jumped off the back of a truck. They swam across a river. They got tranquilized. It didn't stop them. And they survived. And it's this incredible story of kind of animal heroism. The last story was about a guy who was kind of self-destructive and was kind of doing some dangerous things, and his dog bit off his toe and saved his life before he went into shock. And we tied that story up with a story about a cat that was tortured by a family, and how this cat decides to save its master, and kind of in the and it, again, it's it's kind of the weirdest Muppety shows. But there's so much truth. The weirdest story, you can't even make up this stuff.
No.
How these animals saved people after some of the horrors that we do to animals. And they still do some things that make them more, that give them sometimes more humanity than humans.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it made me, that show, Writing Strange Tales, was the kind of the impetus that made me become a vegetarian, quite honestly.
Oh wow, that's fascinating.
I am. So anyway,
I
love animals.
I would love to see that in some iteration.
Well, there's a couple of videos from that online. Maybe I'll share that with you.
Yeah, I should check that out. So you mentioned earlier your relationship with Joe Iconis. You guys are working on Punk Rock Girl together, but I know you also perform in a lot of his concerts.
Yeah.
On MIDI or on keys or on the guitar sometimes. Do you like doing that? Is that I mean, his concerts are always just the best joyous celebrations of music and friendship and family you can go to. But
it's one of those things where when back in 2009, 10, I was asked to music direct one of his shows in Goodspeed. And I said, no, who the hell is this guy? I don't want to do that. I'm a writer. I don't want to music direct somebody else's show. And we were sharing the same stage manager at the time for two different projects we were working on. And my stage manager friend, who's now an entertainment lawyer because she's a very smart person, she said, you need to meet this guy. Get over yourself. You're going to be best friends. Just freaking go up and do this thing. And I swear to you, it was transformative. Going up there for 3 weeks, working with Joe, and he was so collaborative. He listened, we played around with different ideas for his show Rewrite. That was a show that we worked on. And it's very rare to find a kindred spirit, someone who is has the same kind of aesthetic outlook on the world as you do. But this idea of quality matters, craft matters, humanity matters, heart matters, all of those things, but also visceral rock music that is well crafted with all those things that can be part of musical theater matter. And we very much had a very kindred vibe, and we've had quite the last 2 years together. We've had quite a time. I can't think of anyone else that I could talk to about some of the things I've been through, other than someone who has literally been through their weird meteoric rise of a scrappy show from off-Broadway to Broadway, the same way ours did,
Right. I was going to say, you two are definitely both very much your own person, but there is a certain element of inexorable linkness between you, not only because I think you have similar perspectives and worldviews, but what happened with Lightning Thief and what happened with Be More Chill were quite similar in the way that the Cast album really brought it to a wider audience, and the path from off-Broadway to Broadway, shows aimed at younger audiences that really resonated with them. It's fascinating how they were sort of concurrent.
Yeah, well, we shared a lot of DNA. We shared the same book writer and the same director.
Yeah.
Weirdly, the shows had their own trajectories. They came completely different ways to Broadway. I think even Lightning Thief may have been even more unorthodox because I don't think of any other TYA show that has ever made it to Broadway. Whereas Bewitched was always designed as a two-act show.
Right.
But I think, yeah, there's something about playing with genre, sci-fi, fantasy, all of those things, and how we employ rock music, but care about kind of the well-made song is something we both kind of care about, the craft of that. It's not end all be all. Obviously, I love so many shows that don't have perfect rhymes and things like that. But I think for us, just like it, because of our background and the kind of aesthetics that we adhere to, we're like, how do we marry the things that we love with rock music?
Sure. It's funny you mentioned perfect rhymes because I've spoken with someone else that we both know who has said they have had spirited discussions about differences of opinion on perfect rhymes versus unperfect rhymes.
At the end of the day, if it feels right and it doesn't take you out of the moment, I don't care. Yeah. But as a writer, it's just something that like I try to find it just because of the elegance of it, you know. Yeah. Because sometimes the clarity of the thought can be helped with it. But oh my God, no! There's some incredible shows that don't give a shit about rhymes.
Yeah. Sondheim never cared all that much, and he made it work.
Oh, I think he cared a lot about rhymes.
Well, not perfect rhymes all the time, though.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. So we have some like rapid fire general questions that PJ is going to ask you just about.
Hit me, PJ. Well, PJ, your wall behind you is incredible. What is all that? Is that DVDs?
That's all my Blu-rays and all my movie. It actually wraps around the room, so it goes all the way around. Because we were talking off camera earlier. I'm the head writer for a movie trivia show, and for as long as I can remember, I've always had a movie collection at my fingertips. So even on VHS, my parents used to buy bunches of movies. So I just kept doing it ever since.
You got that Criterion collection.
I do. I've got all sorts of stuff, man. But I wanted to ask you real quick, actually, going back to you kept name dropping Frank Miller and this idea with the comic books that you did for, Monster Songs. So what comic books influenced you growing up? Like, did you read a lot of comics?
The funny thing is I didn't read a lot of comics. I just I loved like 30 Days of Night, but I also love like graphic novels like Mouse. And, there's a great book called The Pride of Baghdad about lions that were in the zoo at the Baghdad bombing during one of the Gulf Wars. And I think like I had a big Crumb book when I But honestly, I really loved Jean Bellaire's like House of the Clock and Walls. Those like books, those like young adult novels that were the illustrations were gory. Richard Gory? I can't think of his first name, but did so many classic, terrifying black and white ink illustrations. So I think like that was my way into like the kind of marriage of horror and visuals. It wasn't until much later that I started getting into, like, I just went to my first Comic-Con last year for Love of God.
Oh, okay.
But I think there's some incredible things happening in the world of comics right now. I mean, there's a Shakespeare Villains comic book that I'm obsessed with.
Oh, wow.
I can't think of the name of who's directing or who did the illustrations for it, but it's all like, it's like, Shakespeare Heroes and Villains, Shakespeare Legion of Doom. You should check it out. That
sounds awesome.
But yeah, it's just so fun. One of my best friends, Megan Reinking, hosts a show about geek culture and comic books. So she's the one that's usually like, you need to read this. It's all fun.
No, that's so cool because I mean, for me, Star Wars was actually my gateway to comics, but then my love for horror really expanded it because, like, Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, I'm a huge fan of the old Sam Raimi trilogy.
Me too.
There's a great line of Army of Darkness comics that actually kept that alive for a long time. I actually just put Max into it recently, and
True story.
I'll have to check that out. I love Army of Darkness, and I love the remake, the Evil Dead TV series. I really loved. I thought that was wonderful.
The TV show was so good. Gone before its time, but I mean, I guess with that, is there any TV shows that you've been watching, like especially right now during quarantine? Like, what's your favorite thing that you've got going right now?
Well, it's funny. Like, I really like bizarre, creepy horror. Like, I love Channel Zero. I don't know if you ever watched.
Yes.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
The Teeth Kid and Horror House. Both of those. I watched season 1 and 2. They're amazing. Also, like, I finally got to watch True Detective season 1, which I've been waiting to do for forever.
Yeah.
And I just binged it all within 24 hours. And that was maybe my favorite thing I've ever seen. My God, terrifying and beautiful and philosophical, and God, Matthew McConaughey is so good.
Yeah, back when that first aired, I used to write for an entertainment website, and I recapped all those episodes, and I spent hours on each one because I dived into all the philosophy, the imagery,
God, it's so good.
The symbolism, the Yellow King. There is so much to it.
It's so good. It's so good.
You should watch the third season also. It's pretty good.
All right, I will. Everybody says I need to. My wife loves mystery, so we've been plowing through all of the Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot from the BBC from 1980 through like 1985 to like 2012.
Dude.
There's like 13 seasons of Hercule Poirot, so we're watching that.
I own that Blu-ray set of the entire series.
He's amazing, David Suchet. He's incredible.
Incredible. So I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah.
I really like that, and to your point, we've been talking about horror a lot. Do you have Shudder by any chance? The stream?
No, and I'm dying because I really want to see the Creepshow remake. It looks incredible,
dude. It's excellent. Number one, Creepshow is one of the best things they've got going. They have the rest of Channel Zero. Also, they have season 3 and 4. If you haven't seen it, but there's a movie that Max and I both fell in love with recently. It's called Haunt. And it is so good. It's basically set on like Halloween night, and these people go to a haunted house off the beaten path, like one of those haunt ones that you would go to, and everything that could possibly go wrong does. And it is so good.
I love that. I'll have to check it out.
So, what kind of horror films did you watch growing up? Then I'm curious now because
my parents, they didn't like horror, so I had to sneak watching movies. I always like weird horror, like cosmic horror. So
Big Craft,
right? But like Big Trouble in Little China was maybe one of my favorite movies ever. All of John Carpenter's movies. I mean, from Halloween and the soundtrack to Halloween, but The Thing in particular. Obviously, the special effects still hold up to The Thing. The kind of paranoia of that, the acting of that was so good.
Oh, it's excellent. Kurt Russell's fantastic.
I mean, like Gremlins. I love Gremlins too. I'm like a big sucker for that. I love The Howling. I love the a lot of those 80s horror films that were like those little gems. Oh, what's the Scarecrow one? Oh, I can't think. Halloween guy. Oh my God.
Which one are we talking about? Are like Jeepers Creepers or
not Jeepers Creepers? This is pre that.
Okay.
This is with the actor from Millennium. I am tired. That's why I can't think of it right now. It's going to come to my brain immediately after this. But yeah, there's just a lot of those like 80s weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan. I'm wearing my Fog shirt right now from the John Carpenter era because I'm a big fan of The Fog. There was always like a fun theory that Jamie Lee Curtis's character in that is actually Laurie on the run in witness protection after Halloween.
I love that.
So I've always liked that. But, what with all of that being said, what was like type of music? Obviously you obviously like rock. What was your favorite rock band growing up? What influenced you?
Well, again, like my parents listened to classical music, so I like had this big love of, you would listen to In the Hall of the Mountain King of Peer Gynt, and you'd hear these like terrifying, kettle drums and this spooky ass music, and so a lot of that like influenced me without necessarily being in a rock band. I mean, I loved Rachmaninoff and Beethoven, But I think like when I started finding rock bands, I really fell in love with Springsteen because of his kind of like everyman quality of like a guy being thrown whatever life's dealt him and trying to make the best out of things. And that's something that like in literally Lightning Thief is like 2 parts My Chemical Romance, 1 part Bruce Springsteen.
Right.
You know, and a little bit of Paramore thrown in there. And there's something about like the use of instrumentation, like glockenspiel, stuff like that I really love with Bruce Springsteen stuff. But like I love the Afghan Wigs. They're probably my favorite band. They're Cincinnati based. They were one of the few alt rock bands of the 90s to embrace like soul music as well, and do covers. It's just an incredible group. Greg Dully's lyrics are dark and twisted. I mean, Black Love's an incredible album. It's done as this whole kind of film noir. It was a concept album.
Yep.
Gentleman is such a great album. I love the Afghan Wigs, and they're still making great music to this day. Obviously, Radiohead was the band that helped me learn to play guitar. I wanted to like play those dark, creepy songs.
Mm-hmm.
But like the kind of fatalistic, weird drone of Amy Mann was always on my playlist forever. I love her so fiercely. I've seen like Amy Mann in concert like 8 times. Again, I have an eclectic combination or eclectic taste. I've seen Wilco a million times. I love them and kind of cracker and kind of alt rock country
Right.
and folk music. But I love soul music. I do. Listening to early Aretha Franklin and Wilson Pickett, and I also love like the band. They're a great band. I just read an autobiography of Levon Helms, who's the drummer, lead singer. So yeah, a lot of stuff. I love the Weaker Thans. It's also one of my favorite bands, Canadian band. John K. Sampson is like the poet laureate of Canada. Incredible lyrics. If you ever want to listen to a song about a cat that will just like rip your heart apart, listen to the Weaker Thans. He's got like 3 songs about this cat.
Totally.
Just tear you apart.
No, I'm going to have to look into this now because that sounds fascinating. So just to kind of wrap all this up, what would you be doing right now if you weren't doing theater? Like what could you see yourself doing?
Well, I've been a teacher for a long time. I love teaching. I love education. I miss being in a band. I love being in a band. So if I could be in a band, I would be in a band.
That's awesome.
In some capacity. I've been such a storyteller in whatever function I'm doing, if it's a music director, orchestrator, an actor, and so it's very hard to like remove that. I don't know, whatever I'd be doing, I'd be trying to help in some way, tell stories in some way,
No, absolutely. I mean, I think storytelling's vastly important just to the world as a general thing. So
maybe a work is a museum. Maybe I'd like tell people historical things at a museum. I like museums.
That's awesome. Well, with that, I mean, where can everyone find you online then? Because, it's getting late. We want to be able to let you go. But first, I just want to say, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Well, you can find me on Rokicks, 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 on the Twitter or the Instagram. I'm taking a little hiatus from Facebook, which has been very restorative. But I'll be back eventually. And I've been posting a lot of little instrumental songs, just about like filled with friends and memories and pictures and stuff that I've been posting on my YouTube channel. So that's Rob Rokicki Music. So if you want to hear the newest stuff I'm working on, I usually post it on that.
Awesome.
Well, do you have any final words for us, Rob?
No, man, just keep doing what you're doing. Stay safe, and let's keep trucking until we can have a drink in person.
Yes,
man,
please.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much again for being here, Rob. We're going to go ahead and let you go. And thank you. I can't say it enough. Like, this was the best. It was really great to talk to you.
Oh, thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
You too.
Well, Max, we did it.
We did. Rob Rokicki, the lightning thief.
I can't believe it. What a great show. And he's so fascinating. He's one of us. That's what I like.
Yeah.
It feels real, you know?
Yeah. Well, we hope to be back again in 2 weeks with another episode of Front Center Mezzanine with another amazing guest to be announced. So be sure to check us out. And, we talked about it at the beginning, but what else can people look forward to on the PJ Campbell Network in the coming days?
Coming days, you guys. Tomorrow, The Lion King 2019 watch along. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got quite a few good guests on that. Then Saturday night, they're going to be doing remote insensitivity, Jackbox, all sorts of fun stuff. And I cannot wait. Of course, Monday, as you and I said, we are going to be doing a watch along with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. The PJ Campbell show will not be on Sunday because it's Father's Day and I'm going to go see my parents, but we're going to plan on trying to bring it back the Sunday after.
Yeah, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I hope you all have
Absolutely.
a wonderful day, get to spend time with your kids, and of course, stay safe, wear your masks.
Yeah, and speaking of hanging out with your father and your kid, Evan DeGraff is going to be doing famous passwords on Tuesday, and he's going to be interviewing his father, Chris Clark. And then, of course, Wednesday, we've got Suddenly Soundtracks coming back with the Dreamgirls episode with Jeannine the Machine and Alex Mack. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you know what, man? It's been a long road getting back on here because the world's been crazy, but I'm happy that we came back. And this was like the perfect way for me to do it, was just geeking out with someone who cares about the stuff that we care about in the same way.
Absolutely. And again, if you haven't, go to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music, listen to the cast album of The Lightning Thief. There's a deluxe version that included some new stuff they recorded when they were on Broadway and some demos. The music is great. I highly recommend you listen to it. And there's also an album of monster songs, which you can find on Spotify and other places. The songs are awesome. Give Rob a listen, support his work if you haven't already. He's one of the good ones.
He absolutely is, and it was an absolute pleasure to have him here. So with that, Max, where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Maxwell. Instagram is at Maxwell Inc. And frequently on this here PJ Campbell Network if you aren't already tired of listening to me talk.
Yeah, you're here pretty frequently with me, and I couldn't have a better partner in crime when it comes to the stuff that we do. Look, man, I think that our real life personalities really mesh well, and the people on the internet seem to enjoy us. So I like that we do this. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. You can find me at the Movie Trivia Schmodown writing the questions for our silly internet game show that I'm very, very proud of. We got the Star Wars tournament and the IG tournament going on right now. Please go to YouTube and check that out. Without you guys, the show doesn't exist. And we are very, very grateful for you watching. So with that, Max and I will see you guys in 2 weeks with another episode of Front Center Mezzanine. Until then, guys, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, just be good humans.
Amen.
Have a good night.